Rodriguez here with PULP Colorado, and I'm here with Rabbi Birdie Becker of Temple Emanuel. And the reason why I wanted to talk with you, Rabbi, was I know it's Passover, but also that the temple has gone through quite a significant 6-month span, starting with in November 2019 that it was a target of a terrorist plot. And then in March of this year, there was a fire set to the temple in the social hall. And now what's happening with COVID and Corona-19. So first, how are you doing, and how is the congregation doing under this very extraordinary time for you all?
Well, I am doing well, thank you for asking. And the congregation is actually doing as well as it can. After the thwarted bombing, we were able to come together and really support each other, and the whole community turned out to support us. So it was, and not just the Pueblo community, Colorado and from New Mexico, and people came from all over to support us. It was just incredible. But after the arsonist, we were already into the COVID, the pandemic.
Sure.
And so we weren't able to do that for each other. And so everything to resolve that problem has pretty much relied on our president and his abilities to process everything.
In this trying time, and I think the first question to you is the leader, the faith leader in the temple, what do you tell the congregation to work through this? Obviously there's faith, but in this trying time, sometimes you have to dig a little bit deeper. So what do you tell the congregation to hold on, the beliefs of love and of family and the bonds that have really built up a small congregation, about 20 families, but what do you tell them to get through this?
So we're about 35 families, and it's what I tell them is what I have always told them, which is that we are partners in faith with God. And the only way our beliefs and our faith is known is by how we treat each other. It's not just out there that other people can see or know, except for how you deal with other people. And so for us, there's not that much. Yes, there's your own personal relationship with God, but that's your personal relationship with God. We come together in community to share that. But the way that God is known through us is by how we deal with other people. And so this is a time to deal with other people with grace and with compassion and empathy, and reaching out, maybe not physically, but certainly in any other way that we can, whether it's to continue the communication or it's for the younger people and the healthy people to aid those who are homebound to get what they want, or it's contributing to charities that are helping assist those who are less fortunate and maybe don't have ample shelter, whatever it is that they need at this point in time. And even supporting those organizations that are now processing masks and ventilators and all of these other pieces of equipment that the first line responders need.
In terms of the damage in March and meeting as a body, how does that impact when you go through something that made national news? I know we all got alerts on that Friday afternoon that there was arrest. CNN broke the story, and then everybody was rather shocked that Pueblo was at the center of this plot. But and then you have sort of, is this a repeat of what happened in November, or is this just it turned out that it was just a woman who started a fire in the back and it wasn't terrorist related? But how does that work on your psyche in terms of a very stressful time, and how do you forgive someone like that who is older, maybe not mentally aware, or it was homeless at the time? How do you find faith and love and forgiveness and really try to process this swing of emotions?
Well, you find it in the faith that you've already built on a regular basis for yourself. It's one of those activities that, just like every other thing you participate in, the more you participate, the more it's engraved in you. And so if you already have faith, I know a lot of people are asking, well, is this turning people away from faith? I think that a lot of what we're going through brings people back to faith, because part of that is also bringing you back into community and bringing you back into relating to something that is beyond humanity. It's beyond what the conception of what we might be able to do, that there's some other force working, whatever you call that other force. I happen to call it God. And so I think that coming together for that in any way that we can, that just strengthens that faith. And as far as that person, that one individual does not represent an entire community or an entire people or an entire nation, just as the thwarted bomber did not represent all white males, American males. I mean, you'd never do that. You'd never think to do that, right? You would never think to say that. Same thing with someone who's homeless, or someone who's poor, or someone who's of another faith or another race or another religion. You just wouldn't think to do that.
In terms of Passover and how you celebrate under COVID and coronavirus, you know, the closer together if we're further apart, how do you go through this with a congregation to do something which is so integral and something so important, to spend time with family and loved ones and worship through all the faiths, not just Temple Emanuel, but we just had Easter in Pueblo as well, and a lot of the faiths are having to relearn how to worship God and worship and celebrate with family. How does your temple navigate this rather strange time?
So like everyone else, or most other people who have accepted that this is our new reality, we're learning on the fly. We are and innovating on the fly, just like you said before we started. You know, some larger congregations obviously were already doing things online. I have had to learn to do that, and my congregation has learned to do that. Although we already had a web page and a Facebook page, they weren't really used. Now they're being used. So I post services, I post readings, I post what might have been a sermon or a drash, what we call it, because I don't tend to give long sermons. The thing that's hard is that we can't sing together because there's no platform that allows us to do that. I happen to be a hugger, and so not having that physical contact is something that I've said, well, I verbally said to them, I'm willing to give this up in order to not have to bury someone, lose someone from the congregation. Same thing with my family. I feel the same way. Willing to give up something simple like that, to know that everybody's going to still be there when we have that opportunity to reach out and actually physically touch again.
And it was such, for you, it must have been extra hard because I was at Shabbat on that evening when we were stuck in, or just in sort of this media area in the back of the temple. And you were singing there, and you were joyous and getting everybody energized and singing along and worshiping together. So personally, for you, who's a musician, singer, and dancer, how does, again, going back to a faith leader, when you can't give a sermon, see someone in a pew or see how they react to what you say or the words that they sing, that must be a brand new world for you as well, because there's no interaction between you and your congregation.
Right. And it's hard, like anyone, you react to other people, right? When you're, I don't like to call it a performance because I don't feel like I'm performing. I feel like I'm leading them in prayer. I hope that's what I'm doing, is leading them in prayer and getting them lifted. So what I've learned to do is when I post something, to go back and respond to every person that's responded. And I will do that. I will make sure that anyone who's written a comment gets something back from me. And it's actually been more, and you're asking about me personally, so I will tell you, it's actually been more fulfilling for me than I thought it might be, to see the numbers rise and to know that people are actually responding to and participating with what I've posted. It's not the same because you're not getting that immediate response, but I'm hoping that in some ways I'm serving to meet their needs and to anticipate their needs and to help them reach some of that inspiration that I would hope that I could do in person.
Two final questions. One is for someone in your congregation that's going through a difficult time, either just processing the separation, the loneliness of it, for families that are maybe a little stir crazy, stuck in the house. What do you tell them in terms of their faith, in terms of the Jewish faith, and how can you be a strong leader in this time, personally within your own temple, to make sure someone feels loved and needed and important during this very socially distant time? How do you do that?
So the first thing I did was I reminded them that we are not socially distant. We are physically distant. We are socially so lucky to live in a time when we can reach out to each other like you and I, or see each other, not just hear each other, see each other and interact with each other online. It's not the same as touching, but it sure is so different than when I grew up on a 4-party phone wire, 4 families using one telephone line. So how far we have come, when you think, and I'm not ancient, I'm not Noah, so in a short time, I tell my students that I'm old, but I'm not as old as Noah. So the fact that we can still do that we can support each other. I have had a lot more emails, is that how you say it? Texts?
Sure. Yeah.
Texts.
Yeah.
And phone calls from congregants and even non-congregants.
And that is that bringing you closer together? You know, in a strange way, is it forcing you personally and the congregation personally and other faith leaders to rethink how you are socially connected with your own congregation, even that you know you will return, but in the past it was whether you go to service or you go to temple or you go to mass or one of those, then everybody shakes hands, you eat some donuts or whatever the celebration is, and you go away and you come back next week. Is it rethinking are you rethinking in how you connect both spiritually and physically and also emotionally, that there might have been some deficiencies in the old ways that people celebrated every week?
I think that I'm in a somewhat different position than many people because being a small congregation, very, very highly connected. The families are very highly connected. Pretty much know, if someone's sick, we know. If someone's gone into the hospital, we know. If someone's in need, for the most part, we know. And that I think is an advantage to being a very small congregation. Maybe as well a disadvantage because everyone knows each other's lives maybe too intimately. But it is a community. It's not like 1,000 or 2,000 family congregation where you only know a small segment of it. Everybody knows everybody. And so for us, there's not as much change in terms of reaching out to each other and being there for each other. For me, the big change is that I'm so distant to begin with. I'm physically distant from them to begin with, because I don't live in the Pueblo area. So that change of not seeing them, and like I said, being able to, just be physically in the same room is certainly different. I think for other faith leaders that the one-on-one perhaps conversations and the community gatherings online and Zoom when you actually see every person in the room, whereas otherwise if you're standing on a pulpit, you may not see every person in the room. I think that may actually create community in a different way and make us realize that we may miss something when we're in that larger space. And so hopefully that will carry through when we can actually be together in those other spaces, that we can recognize every single person there. And maybe not every time, but, be able to say, okay, I know you, I know who you are, I know what you need. That makes each person feel like they're valuable, regardless of who they are, what their station is, what their position is, how often they come. I think people like to know that.
I think that, as we discussed just a little bit before, that it's all just a relearning, and it's a new learning process, and even faith leaders are relearning how they connect with their own flock and congregation. My last question to you is, and I think this is only one that a few institutions can speak about, and I think this is why I wanted to talk with you and Temple Emanuel, was as one of the oldest certainly Jewish houses of worship, but it was part of Old Pueblo. It's part of that Pueblo of immigration, and it's a part of what really made the fabric of Pueblo in southern Colorado at the turn of the century, before the sort of great American century was built up. But being a small congregation, there's also sort of lost in the fray, and I think that everyone rediscovered Temple Emanuel, unfortunately, after it made national news. So in these last few minutes, if you could speak for your congregation and the Jewish community in southern Colorado, I know that's a big weight, but I'll give that one to you because I'm talking to you now. But what's one thing that you would like to convey to southern Colorado that maybe we don't know about Temple Emanuel or about your congregation?
Well, he just put something on me that I don't know that I can do, even though we're only a few congregations in southern Colorado, but there are at least
I know it's a lot of pressure.
And that means there are at least 8
but
opinions, right?
I know it's a lot of pressure, but I only got one person on I'm interviewing right now, so I'll give you all the power. I'll give you all the power.
I think what I would say is that we've been there since, the 1800s. The Jewish community has been an integral part of Colorado. We actually started out in 2 locations, primarily in Leadville and in Pueblo, just as the state did, primarily in those 2 locations. And we've been there since the beginning. Well, obviously not. The Native American Indians have been there since the beginning.
Right.
But since it's been established as cities, and that we're there, we're open, we're welcoming, and having worked in Colorado Springs, I would say the same thing for them, that they're there, they're open, they're welcoming. We're not going anywhere. We plan to still be there. It's true that our membership has dwindled. It certainly, it left places like Trinidad. For the most part, it left places like Leadville. There are a few hangers on, but in Pueblo, we're still vibrant. We're still part of the center of the community. And you're right, people didn't know that we were there. We hope that they do now, and that they come and join us once our buildings are open again. I guess in that sense, we're lucky that this arson happened just before we had to close anyway for COVID. And so hopefully when one restriction is drawn back, the building will be rebuilt, and we'll be able to go in and join together. And then again, I hope everybody joins us. Jews, non-Jews, come to the services, always have, and I've been there almost 20 years, and I've always had non-Jews in the services as well. Everybody is welcome. Just come with an open heart, and we'll be there.
I think on those words, it's a good message of love and openness, even if we're socially distant. But as you said, we don't have to be. We can be physically distant, but not socially distant. Right. Final thing is, do you have a fundraiser or something up if people wanted to support Temple Emanuel during this time and to recover both from the terrorist plot last year, but also from the arson this year? Do you have something up for them?
I believe that there is a GoFundMe page for Temple Emanuel Pueblo, and certainly donations can always just be sent directly to the temple. It is a nonprofit. It's a 501c.
We'll put that link up when we put this up in the stories. Rabbi, I appreciate you talking with me this afternoon. I don't think that for people that don't know, the church is just, the temple is just wonderfully beautiful. I think it's tucked away in sort of the, I don't know if we can call it a church district, but there's so many old and wonderful churches in this older part of Pueblo, and Temple Emanuel certainly helps to make up the fabric. And it's just a wonderfully old building, and the congregation is just filled with love. So I appreciate you talking with me, and I wish you well and stay safe.
Thank you. You too. Be well.
Thank you.